Well, hello, you're most welcome. This week's episode isn't the usual. I don't know if you watch Anne of Sparnets, but Anne has been buying the most beautiful fabric for quite a while. Of course, we all like to stroke fabric, don't we? And just look at it. But Anne has been keen to make a quilt. Anne is a wheelchair user, and she doesn't want a great big quilt, that's going to catch on wheels, and she just wants a quilt that she can put round her lap, on her lap, round her legs, for the wheelchair, but also when she's sitting in a chair at home. And I've been hearing her say she's going to make this and she's going to do that. And then I messaged her and I said, would you like me to show you how to make a quilt that hasn't got any matching seams? I do feel that when you make your first quilt, you want it to be a success, because that will then, catapult you onto doing the next one. But if you look at it and think, oh, those seams don't quite match up, and oh, this and that, and you see mistakes, it doesn't spur you on. So my friend Heather said, well, why don't you show this quilt? And it's like a brick wall, really. You've got a 5x9 there and a 4.5x5 there. And then you've got a 4.5x5 there and a 5x9s going along there. So there's no matching seams. I said, that's a good idea. So that's what I've done. That's what I've been doing this week since I saw you last. Heather was round. We pulled out some fabric, and I'll show you how I sew it together. I show you if you've only got scissors and if you're going to hand sew it. And I show you how to do it with a rotary cutter, although I expect if you've got a rotary cutter and a board, you would know how to do it. But nevertheless, if you haven't got a rotary cutter and a board, a cutting board, you might decide that you want to buy one and get started with it. I don't know. There's so many permutations of and all of that. So I just thought I'd put this little video up. Well, it's to show Anne, really, how to, yes. And I've stopped halfway. I'm now up to the point where I'm going to get the wadding out, the backing, and select my cotton for what I'm going to do the quilting with. But I thought I'd make that another episode. It'll give me time to do it as well. So I'll be up with my usual stories and what's on my crafting desk, and in my next episode, which will come out, I don't know when, it won't be too long. I'm doing it fortnightly, I think, but as you know, I'm not a creature of habit. It just, watch out, and watch out for it. Let's just get on with it, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so what we're doing, Heather's popped round, and we're going to do this little new thing about making a quilt for absolute beginners. And it is for absolute beginners. I taught Heather to quilt, didn't I?
Yes.
So she knows what it feels like. Well, I know what it feels like. We've all started somewhere, haven't we? We've all been an absolute beginner. And we're going to make a small lap quilt. Yeah, just to cover the knees. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to take you each step of the way. So the first thing to do, if you're going to follow along with me, is to select some fabric, which we've done. I keep my fabric in old leather suitcases, and we've just pulled some bits out, haven't we, Heather?
We have. We've had a lovely delve.
We have, and Heather's very good at that. They're Tilda, so they're all the same range.
The colours blend nicely.
That's it.
But they're all different patterns. There you go.
There we are. What's the advantage, do you think, then, of having it all made by the same person?
The quality of the material is the same, so they will sew the same.
Yes.
Which you find use different makes, they sew differently, don't they?
Yeah. One's thicker, one's thinner.
That's right. Yeah. They react differently on the machine.
Yeah. Good point.
The colour blends. You taught me that the information on the side, the dyes are the same, so that within the range they should all blend nicely. So you get that.
Okey-doke. What did we pull out?
Well, it's not pulled out really. It's not gone away, is it?
That's it.
It's one of your favourites at the moment, that material you bought.
Yeah, so I made that for Tommy, didn't I? And I made that for Nicola.
Yeah.
And I did say I was going to make one for George. We'll see what happens.
We should be able to create something with this as well.
Absolutely. So they're all the bits that I had left over because I cut it wrong, remember?
Yeah.
Which was a good thing, because I wouldn't have wanted those quilts any bigger.
No.
They're super.
But the patterns on this are slightly different, so there might be a bit maybe fussy cutting just to get your whole pictures in that you were talking about.
Yeah. And then the last one we pulled out, well, I don't know if you remember, I bought it some time ago, well, last summer, I think, but I haven't had a chance to make it. But I thought it would be a good one to try and see how it comes out with the quilt that we had in mind. And this was a panel, wasn't it?
Yes. Beautiful.
Which
very
you can
pretty.
buy. You know, you can just buy panels, and it might be a good way of starting your very first quilt. Because what we're going to do with this one is not cut it up.
No. Just
No seams.
block.
I mean, no seams. So I'm going to do 3. I'm going to show you how to make it on the machine. I'm going to show you how to hand sew it as well if you haven't got a machine. And all you need is some fabric bits. It can be if you've got that you want to use that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be arranged like we've just shown you. It can be all sorts.
Really scrappy, anything.
Mm-hmm.
And also how to make a sandwich, and then backing, and how to do some basic hand quilting. So this one is designed so there's no matching seams, so there's no mistakes to be made. You can do it on the machine or you can do it by hand. So I hope you're enjoying us along the way, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
And so I have some plastic. It's quite thin. It doesn't have to be gridded, but it's easy then to work it out, because what we're going to do, we're going to cut 4.5 by 5 and 5 by 9. 1, 2, 3, 4.5 is there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is there. So I'm going to cut that out. You can do it with a rotary cutter. It's really, really precise then. But not all of you have got rotary cutters. You've got scissors. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just cut the edges off. So here we go. I want 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With quilting, they say you count twice and cut once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 here. Okay, I shall cut that out. We're going to cut 3 of these for each strip and 1 of these. This is the heat erasable, but I do like it because I can see it. However, I don't use it anymore on the front of my fabric because it has come back on my macaron, and it won't iron off again. But I like it because I can really see it. I'm going to draw around. Now, if you're okay at cutting, you can cut it out, or if you'd rather use a rotary cutter, get your board out. Before I sewed them together, I decided to have a little play around and take them out of their lines before they were all in lines. And I thought this was better because it made you look more for the different fabrics. So that's how I'm going to sew mine. So my first row will be 1, 2, 3 9x5s and a 4x5 on that end. My next row will be 3 9x5s and that 4x5 on the end. So alternate rows. So I'm now going to go and just sew along those lines and make each row. I shall leave it down and pick up the row, sew it and put it back again and do it one at a time. But I find I don't get in a muddle then. So I've picked up my first line and I've laid it down as it was upstairs, and I'm now going to sew it together. So I'm going to put that one to that one and sew together. I put the fabric on the edge of my foot and that keeps the seams always even. So here's my first two lines, the 4.5 by 5 at one end and the 4.5 by 5 at the other. As you can see, no seams to match up. Said it before, I'll say it again. So I'm going to carry on and finish sewing it together. I am pressing the seams as I go. So let's have a chat about the quilt. As I say, I chose to muddle this one up and not do it in lines because there's so much to look at. And if in lines you knew where it was going to be, although I tried to be random, and you can see I've got two blues together. Oh, why didn't that blue go over the other side? That's what happens. You think, oh, that's it, and then Bob's your uncle. That's how it turns out. It doesn't matter. So long as I've got my 4.5 by 5 one end, and on the next line 4.5 by 5 on the other end. So now I could leave it like that and just bind it. Absolutely fine. It'd look lovely. The binding would show it off. What shall I do? I have this green, so I thought I would put a green line round. But then I've got this brown as well. Could I put a small little brown? Because that picks up on the foxes. It's purely a matter of choice, and this is where we go with our quilting. The time is taken up with the design, and it's your design, and it makes it unique, and it's fun. Take your time to do it. I think to make it simple, I'm going to just put the green on and maybe use the brown as my binding. When I put the green on, I won't just sew a strip along and then cut it at the bottom. I will look at the measurement, which is 32, and I will cut 32. And then I will sew that to either side. I'll come back when I've done that. If you get scared about cutting your edging before and it not quite fitting, or you might do it wrong, draw yourself a line. In that case, that was 32, and then you know where you're going to. If it goes wrong, you've still got that on the end, and now I can cut it off, rather than cut it off and then sew it. That way you're making it the right length for the quilt, because there's a lot of give in those seams and a lot of give in that edging. And there you have it. I've sewn either side, up and down, and then straight across on the top and the bottom. This part is for hand sewing. You might have a machine, but you want to do it by hand. You want to do sitting in the chair, chatting away, just relaxing. You might choose not to use your machine. You might not have a machine. For whatever reason, we like to hand sew. You might say, as my friend Heather in the introduction, no thanks, I do everything on the machine. She does everything on the machine. And she said something interesting. I said, Heather, you haven't got any kits. And she said, no, I don't do kits. I said, tell me why that is. She said, well, with kits, you have to get it right because you're doing it to somebody else's prescription. And I can't do that. I do it to my own prescription. And boy, has she got a good prescription, but she does it to suit herself. And this is, I think, a very good thing to say. If you want to machine it, machine. If you want to hand sew, hand sew. If you want to cut it out with scissors, if you want to cut it out with rotary cutter, do what you want. So you need some sandpaper. I've put mine on, a little, little board. I think it was an old little board for the children, one of those blackboard things. But anyway, that's all irrelevant. You can just put it on the table. Mine just happens to be very well used, and it's on a piece of wood, but you don't have to. You need some cotton, and I use I've got Gutermann thread. I might use something different if I've got it, but that's what I've got. I find a light grey Gutermann thread, it just does the trick. Colour 8. It's fine, but it's strong. A little pair of scissors. I use a thimble, can't do anything without one. And I've got a little mouse. It's just a triangle of fabric stuffed and sewn under there. But that's what I use all the time. With this, as I've said before, there's no matching seams. So what I'm going to do, I've got 2 pieces of fabric. That's going to go, I've got to do it in shot. That's going to go there, and that's going to go there on the quilt. But before that, I'm going to draw my lines. It's going to need lines all around it. I've got a ruler here, and along here is a dotted line, and that's 1/4 inch. So I'm going to draw 1/4 inch around my fabric. Now you don't need it heavy, just light is fine. And when I drew around the template that I made for cutting it out, doing that on sandpaper would have helped, because you get a nice straight line. It's as simple and as quick as that. So that's one piece. Let's do the other piece, flatten it out. The other thing to say is, if there's any, don't ever cut out on a crease. Oh, never cut out on a crease, because that crease, that fold, honestly, it doesn't come out. So always cut around a fold, unless you're absolutely stuck. I never wash my fabric. I like the dressing in the fabric. I like to be able, I wasn't taught to wash. I was taught not to wash, actually, unless it was a red piece of fabric and you wanted to just test it for dye, because red often is the one that we worry about. Hoping you can see this. Put the light back on. And so here I am. This is the piece that goes at the bottom. This is the piece that goes at the top. And so I'm going to fold that over each other. And I'm going to put on my little pin. And I'm going to put the pin through the corner, the dot that those 2 lines make. I'm going to put it through, and then I'm going to put it through that line. And I do the same here. I'm going to put it through. And put it through. Adjust your pin so that it is right. That's a little bit too low down. I didn't get that in the corner. I can see. Get that in the corner, get that in the corner. Flip your pin back, and then that should be right. Should be. It may not be. There we are. I put it through that line, and then it comes through onto that line. And then, I have shown you this before, but if you're new, that side through into that side, because you've done it exactly 1/4 inch on both sides. As you hit that row, that line, you do hit that line, but if not, you just adjust it. So there we are. Does that look right? It does. I'm going to take that pin out and hold it and put my needle in there. Check, it's come through onto the corner. And I'm just going to do little running stitches. If they're not small, just do, if you can't do small running stitches because of your hands, just do a little back stitch. That's all you need, just to make that seam. You're not going to wear this quilt, so it's not going to, it's going to be quilted down, and it's not like a seam on a shoulder. Little back stitch, just in case it should come undone, because then if you've got a little back stitch about every 4 stitches, do a little running stitch there, take a little back stitch. That's going to keep it safe and secure. I mean, how relaxing is it to sit and do that? For some of you, you might say, no way, Jose, let me do it on my machine. It's really horses for courses, isn't it? I love doing both. But I must admit, in the past, I haven't often made quilts on the machine, purely because all the quilts that I've made have points that match, and I can't match them up on the machine. Now here I'm going straight into that corner. Whereas if I do it by hand, you see, you can get the points like this one and this one exactly right. So I've always done it by hand. But if you're doing as a design as this is, I don't knot. I just do a couple of little back stitches, pop that in there, I cut it. If you're doing a design like I'm showing you that doesn't have any matching seams, that's going to work brilliantly on the machine, but also it'll work brilliantly by hand. Here we go, and there we are. Now I would press that seam, being a hand quilter, open. Pressed it open. You can do it with your fingers if you like, but my iron's here and I just pressed it, and there we have it. Looks perfect, doesn't it? The next ones are going to join here along there. Because I drew all round, I've got my line. So I shall go and have a little bit of hand sewing, and the next part of the video will be showing you how to make a quilt sandwich. We're going to have the backing, the top, and the wadding. I know in America you call it batting. I call it wadding, but it's all the same stuff. So that'll be coming up in a minute. So here is my Tilda quilt. It's just made from scraps. You saw we pulled them out of the suitcase, and I just arranged them higgledy-piggledy. which in itself is quite an art, because look, if you noticed, I've got 3 brown ducks together. That's supposed to be higgledy-piggledy, but there we are. That's how it's turned out. I found some, chose that fabric for the edging, cut it 2.5 as before, and that is the end result. So the tilde one I did vertically, and this one I did horizontally. Of course, if you want to make a much bigger quilt, you would just add more pieces, add more lines, and there you are, you have one. You can do anything you like. That's the joy of quilting. You could make it a lot plainer, and you'll see your stitches. You could just have the odd few plain bricks in there. I've just gone wild with pattern because that's what we pulled out. So now we're going to do the batting, the wadding and the backing. Okay, so we've got this far. I hope it's to your taste and what you like, or you can adapt it to whatever will suit you. I'm going to show you the batting I've got. Hobbs Heirloom Premium Cotton Batting. I bought a full size because I'm always, well, I told you I wasn't going to do any more quilting. What a joke. Everybody's pulling my leg now, my friends. Oh, another quilt pen. Well, I can't stop. I want to make a double wedding ring one with all my scraps, a scrappy double wedding ring. I've just feel, anyway, I'm getting finished. I do one thing at a time. Let's put it like that. So Hobbs Heirloom Premium Cotton Batting. This actually is 81 by 96. But of course you don't need that much for the 2 that I've shown you. I'll put on the screen how big they are. And it does say this will shrink, which sounds scary if you haven't done anything like this before, but it will shrink 5%, which means, and it says it's quite flat. The combination of these fibres creates a strong, long-wearing bat and is very easy to work with. Hobbs Heirloom Cotton will give your quilts the flatter, more traditional look of antique quilts without the need for excessive quilting. Close quilting will be very flat and more space in between, which I'm going to do. We'll give it a little bit of, bounce, but also it's going to shrink that 5%, which I love. It gives it that slight wrinkly look. It's lightly needle punched and resonated with a soft resin to provide stability of the fibre and prevent the polyester from bearding. This process makes heirloom cotton batting uniquely easy to quilt by hand. And when it says when washing, it says all you need to do, a 15-minute wash time is quite sufficient in your washing machine. And do use a very, I use the one that I wash my socks with, that doesn't need rinsing out. Do use a very, very gentle liquid, and you don't need all softeners on it or anything like that. Just a 15-minute quick wash, and then spin excess water out. When the quilt is just barely damp, it can be placed in the dryer on air for a few minutes to fluff up. So that's what I do. It says dry it flat, and then you can just put it in your dryer if you've got one, just for few minutes, and then it just plumps it up, which is good. And it also says Hobbs Bonded Fibres has developed this cotton batting to be a natural fibre alternative to polyester for the discriminating quilter. Heirloom is wonderful to quilt for hand or machine quilters. So there we are. That's what I'm showing you. And I'm going to say cheerio on this part of the filming because, well, it's enough for you to watch, I feel. And I will then start my next film with the cutting up of this wadding and layering it up, showing you how to pin it, or if you want to tack it, it's up to you, and then showing you how to quilt it. But that'll be for another day, so watch out for that. Okay, so I'm going to say cheerio, lovely to see you, and take care till next time. Bye-bye.